morning. It is Friday, May 1st, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, in scenes reminiscent of Baltimore, Israeli police face off against Ethiopian Israelis protesting over police discrimination and brutality. As the deadline for forming the coalition looms, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pens the first agreement with two parties. And later on the show, a closer look at the politicians' Instagram photos of the week. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi, and we begin in Jerusalem, where a protest by Israelis of Ethiopian descent against police discrimination and violence created scenes reminiscent of events in Baltimore or Ferguson. Hundreds of protesters blocked the main street and threw rocks and bottles at police outside their headquarters in the city. Some of the protesters tried to march on to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence, but were kept back and dispersed, with police employing tear gas. At least 3 police officers and 8 demonstrators were wounded in the scuffles. The protest was sparked by the surfacing earlier this week of a video in which 2 policemen were seen beating an Ethiopian Israeli soldier. The demonstrators also denounced racial profiling against black-skinned minority. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat both gave addresses calling for calm. With me in studio, our I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good morning to you.
Good morning,
our one and only Ami Kaufman. Good morning to you. And we go first now via on the phone to Jerusalem Post correspondent Seth Frantzman. Seth, good morning to you.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
You were on the scene yesterday. You saw that firsthand. Describe what happened, first of all.
The protest began outside the National Police Headquarters on Route 1, and it started off with just a few hundred people, but over time it grew to more than, I think, 1,000. And they ended up blocking Route 1 in both directions and the light rail train. And in contrast to some of the scenes of violence that was caught on camera later on, this was a totally peaceful demonstration, and the police showed a lot of restraint. And it was clear the officers were telling their men, listen, just let this go, let this happen, and we don't want to see scenes of violence. And
when did it start going wrong then?
A lot of some group of them decided that they would then march down to the center up towards the Prime Minister's residence, and I guess there was a short, brief exchange of tear gas and rocks, and then Mayor Nir Barkat went and he spent, I think, about almost an hour and a half in the midst of a few hundred of these protesters, basically listening to their complaints. And it was raucous, and the people were shouting that this is a police state, and they wanted the police commissioner Yochanan Danino to resign, and they want the officers that beat this guy to be in prison. So
no, and stopping their move to head towards the Prime Minister's office, clearly done by the police, but that's not what started the scuffles. What the people, what were they chanting, and essentially, how did it eventually come into calm at the end of the day?
I mean, I think the scuffles was just a very short, a few minutes that the police felt that had gotten out of hand. They had not deployed their forces in front of the Prime Minister's residence. But once the mayor had shown up and they had put up a kind of a line on Gaza Street, I mean, it was people shouting and chanting, but there was no violence, and I think it all worked itself out pretty well. I don't know. I think the real unfortunate thing yesterday was you didn't see a participation of a lot of people that were non-Ethiopian. You saw there was a few communists from the left that came, and there was a few other Haredim and a few people, but I think you didn't see a participation of a lot of the mainstream left-wing NGOs that talk about racism in society. So that, I think, was something that was unfortunate. No,
and that's a valid point. Many will say, and people I think working also the criminal beat in Israel would say that this was a long time coming. Would you agree?
Yeah, I know from people in the community that they feel there's been an increased police violence in the last few years, and a lot of it is directed at young Ethiopian men. And I think it's part of a pattern in general of some police brutality that goes unchecked in society. So I think that it's just lucky someone caught this on camera, because if they hadn't, no one would have believed this young soldier. And I think also the fact that he was a soldier angered a lot of the people there, because a lot of the people there were recently demobilized, and they were saying, listen, my brother was just in Gaza. I mean, how can this happen in a society that used to honor its soldiers? So I think that was also a breaking point.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point in that respect. To stay with it for a second, Tal Shalev with us in studio. I'm wondering with you, because the Ethiopian community not very well represented in the Israeli government in many ways, in the parliament. There have been former MKs, Ethiopian MKs, not that much in this forming government. I'm assuming there will be one. Wasn't even on the agenda in these elections, was it?
Well, no, but these, it's like both Ferguson and Baltimore and now Jerusalem. It's not only about police violence. It's about a general feeling of discrimination. And the problem of the Ethiopian discrimination, I think, has been on the table in the past 2 or 3 years. Once periodically it comes up, there is a large feeling amongst the young generation of this community who grew up in Israel, who are totally Israeli speakers, who have a feeling, who have a problem
in the military, as we saw.
Who serve in the military, who have a problem just bursting the glass ceiling, and this creates an uproar. And the Ethiopian, usually the community keeps it inside, and then once in a while it comes and bursts outside. And this is a problem that everyone knows it's on the table. The Israeli Prime Minister yesterday did immediately react and have a phone call with the leadership of the community. But so this is not. It's not only about. It's not about police violence. It's not the video. This is something that has to come up as other. It's one of the unhealed wounds of Israeli society. There has been a clear problem with absorbing the Ethiopian Jewry Aliyah, and they have not been absorbed correctly. They still, not correctly, but at least fully, they still live in their communities, and they definitely suffer from discrimination. And this is something that, again, they are represented in the Knesset periodically, but I guess in many ways the representation in the parliament is it's adequate,
but as you said, they barely get through the glass ceiling. They never really get to high positions, either in government, neither in the army, in police, in the judicial, in business.
No, and it makes me wonder, because the Ethiopian Israelis that were brought in on a very highly televised campaign. And when they were brought in, approximately
85. There were two major.
There were two big ones.
85 and 92.
Not absorbed as, and of course, the Russian community had problems itself, but it had a much easier time.
I wouldn't compare. Each community had its own problems, and each community was mistreated in many ways. There has been, Israel does see itself as a country that absorbs the nations and absorbs immigrants, Jewish immigrants from all around the world. But it's a young project. My question is, do
they have to be white? I'm going to put it that blunt on the table.
Definitely, there is a color issue on the table.
Of course, yeah. Of course, it's a racial issue. I mean, if you ask young Ethiopian kids when they're walking down the street and they see a cop car going by, they'll say to you, or they put their hands in their pockets to see if they have their ID with them, because they know they're going to be carded, pretty much like very similar to what happens in the States. I don't think Russian immigrants exactly feel that way.
And just to point out, I don't know this, just to take it one step forward, I think people who are, one community that is following what is happening with this demonstration yesterday very closely is American Jewry, who was very much involved in bringing them to Israel and bringing the Ethiopian community to Israel. And the liberal American Judaism, who is following Baltimore closely, who is following Ferguson, closely, and is following Israel's domestic changes closely, is definitely also going to be following this protest, because it is something that creates a distance in values in many ways. The discrimination that the Ethiopian Jews are complaining of, definitely this has this reaches over the Atlantic and reaches the Jewish community in the United States. We did hear them in the past.
Especially this time. I mean, if we look at the scenes, and right now I think this is, I think we're seeing Baltimore right now. But if we look at the scenes, it looks exactly the same.
It does.
In many ways.
Yeah.
That's not Jerusalem. That would be Baltimore.
I want to point out one difference. The mayor of Jerusalem, Nir Barkat, whom of course the protests are not against him. They're just happening in Jerusalem.
Discontent. Yeah.
But he did yesterday spend an hour and a half, as Seth mentioned earlier. He spent an hour and a half in the crowd listening to them, and that is not the way the mayor of Baltimore reacted to the protest. So but there is a sense sense of listening. You do feel from the government, maybe they don't implement, but at least...
I was about to say, it has not really been implemented. It's the sense that there is, listening, but the same goes for the United States, doesn't it?
Oh, totally.
They listen, but it's not implemented.
And especially Barack Obama has been criticized that he listens very well, but and voices his opinion, but hasn't really been doing much to change things.
Yeah, exactly. But to conclude that things are calm in Jerusalem when it comes to that story at this point as we move along. Aside from the recent events in Jerusalem, things appear to be looking up for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the political arena. With five days to go before the coalition deadline, the Likud has already signed agreements with two parties, the new social-oriented Kulanu party and the ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism. But he's not quite at the finish line yet, still needing the signatures of Jewish Home, Israel Beitenu, and Shas. Now, to help us break it all down and see where we're headed, or Israel is headed, Tal Shalev in studio. So, what is going on with those agreements, two signed?
Well, yeah, so we're 2 down, 3 to go, as you mentioned, but the final countdown is getting closer.
Try not to sing, yeah.
We're going to get used to a new nickname. It's called the 67 government, named not after the 67 borderlines.
Not to be confused, yeah.
But after the 67 members of parliament from which the government is assembled. And by law, Netanyahu was granted 4 weeks, another 2 weeks of extension. And being a very experienced politician, he will keep the cards close to him, and he will probably use every last minute. So these three left parties that we still have left to sign with, Shas, Israel Beitenu, and the Jewish Home, are all flexing muscles at the last minute. So we do hear even on last minute crises, and but most of this is been as it has been in the past 6 weeks. Next week, the assumption is that Netanyahu will be able to present Reuven Rivlin with the government. He won't be sworn in probably next week just because it's a Jewish holiday, but the government will probably be sworn in because the option, if Netanyahu doesn't form a government at this moment, the option is to go back to new elections, and that is something that definitely nobody really wants.
No, that nobody really wants. And before we continue, because as you mentioned, Tal, the ultra-Orthodox parties always go first. Netanyahu's first coalition deals were met with disdain by opposition, and particularly the former government partner, Yesh Atid, the party that lost half of its strength in the last elections, is organizing a major protest later this morning in Tel Aviv. We're joined by Yesh Atid Minister of Knesset Karine Elahrar. Karine, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yael.
What will you be protesting this morning specifically?
Well, what we're witnessing is that the coalition agreement between the Likud and Yahadut HaTorah is fairly a fair sale of all the things which are really important to the Israeli society. And it comes on the expense of the Israeli taxpayer. We're witnessing the fact that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants so badly to be the Prime Minister that he really sold every principle that matters to the Israeli society in order to have a coalition. And we won't take it as a fact. And we're going to fight against this agreement with every tool that we have, Yael. Going out to the streets, going to courts, of course in the parliament, in the Israeli Knesset. Every tool that we have as an opposition, we're going to use it because we think it's immoral to work like this. I totally understand politics, and I totally understand the need to be in the government, but it doesn't have to be so ugly. It doesn't have to be reversing all the achievements that Yesh Atid had through the past 2 years. And I think it's really unfair to every Israeli citizen, a taxpayer citizen, that is working very hard in order to have a better society.
Karine, thank you so much for joining us this morning. There's a demonstration, as we mentioned. But Tal, I'm asking you, because it was pretty clear that the ultra-Orthodox parties are going to try and reverse anything that Yesh Atid has achieved, so to speak, over the course of the last government. Makes me wonder if Yesh Atid will survive the opposition years.
This is the perfect outcome for Yair Lapid, because suddenly he has a legacy.
He has a case.
No, suddenly in the past few days, we've been hearing about Lapid's legacy going down the drain. So, well, it appears Lapid, after 2.5 years, has a legacy, something we didn't know that existed first. But yes, definitely, Lapid's total...
I have to say, this is terribly reminiscent of his father's party in many... It's so, yeah, it's almost
exactly,
like a replay.
but this could actually save him in many ways, because this now... Okay, so we had one government with him without the ultra-Orthodox parties. Netanyahu discovered that doesn't work. They were the first parties he ran to sign a coalition agreement with. They were the first parties he agreed to their demands. Of course, the United Torah Judaism does not take any portfolios, only the deputy ministers, but they had a long list of demands that cost a lot of money that Netanyahu agreed to first, because he saw that the option of going to a government without them
is not a possibility.
And he preferred them. They are stable, they are loyal to some extent, as long as they get as long as they get what they need. And Lapid, in many ways, who now is on the outside, now has a meaning for his for being an opposition. He can now dedicate his term in the opposition to fighting this and to try to protest this process. So in many ways, you know, Lapid and the ultra-Orthodox parties, they kind of feed one another. They feed
another,
each
the agendas,
and
actually, and as you mentioned, the case in front of the cameras, the case in front of their constituencies. Now, Bibi's plans for the next administrations would be what? Because it's clear he's forming this coalition. It's happening.
Well, it seems like Netanyahu's plans for the next coalition is he understands that he, at least on the international front, he needs to just keep things on the status quo. But
He's very good at that.
But on
I said that. Yeah, okay.
But it's not clear that that's possible at this moment to keep a status quo. Internationally speaking, and regarding Israel's international standing at this moment, keeping a status quo would not be sustainable from the international community's point of view. But he does plan to focus on domestic issues. That is clear. We're talking about very substantial housing reforms that Moshe Kahlon is planning. We're talking about some Supreme Court legislation that at the moment has been halted by Moshe Kahlon. We're talking about a wide legislation that has to do with media control. Netanyahu definitely wants to have control over more control over the media, and there is an initiative about voting for Israel expatriates that Netanyahu has been vowing to promote in the past few years.
When you said maintaining the status quo, the White House is not going to. I mean, we assume that the White House is not going to let that fly, as they've been gesturing.
Well, Netanyahu is going now with a narrow right-wing government, but he definitely is keeping the national unity government on the table, as he had in the past few months. In some of the coalition agreements, there is a clause that says that the coalition partners will have to agree to changes in their positions if the government changes its assembly. So there in many ways there is still an option of a national unity government. One of the widest assumptions I've been hearing is that eventually Herzog and the Zionist Union will be joining the government, because there will be either security tensions that will enable an emergency unity government, or B, international pressure that will be coming, as you said, from the U.S., but mainly from Europe, on the two-state solution, on the issue of the settlements, that Netanyahu will have to have more moderate forces enter the government to present a better face to the world. To
the international arena. Tal Shalev, thank you. You are staying in studio as we move along. Ami Kaufman, who sits in studio every morning to save me with everything I forget, the news that is fit to print and what we need to know. Yes.
Right, we're moving on to Nepal again. The numbers. Right now, the most accurate numbers we have are 6,134 people dead. 72 of those were in India and 25 in China.
6,000. It's crossed 6,000.
It has. And
with assumption of, I'm assuming that it is going to reach 10. Well, it's
probably going to reach 10, yeah. And 14,000 people injured as well.
And we do have also a report from Shai Ben-Ari, I-24 News. Shai Ben-Ari, who is in Kathmandu on the ground. This is the report he sent us earlier today.
Yes, we are here in Kathmandu this morning. Yesterday, 2 people were removed from the rubble alive, almost 6 days after the original event, talking about a 20-year-old woman, a woman in her 20s, and a 15-year-old boy, who was later removed to the IDF military field hospital on the outskirts of the city here. Still glimmers of hope in Kathmandu itself, but the situation elsewhere is much more grave. Still reports persist of villages where up to 90% of the people have been killed. Yesterday we had a chance to visit the village of Sakwo, which is a few miles to the northeast of the city. The scene there was utter devastation, with most of the houses built of clay bricks and wood basically collapsing, not much left The situation is even more serious in remote villages, which are even more difficult to access. There are areas which are basically inaccessible even now. Reports of villagers having to dig through the rubble with their bare hands. There's an estimate that in one certain district, perhaps up to 40,000 homes, in fact, destroyed. The death toll in this country has already surpassed 6,000, but with these reports of the damage in the rural areas, the inaccessible areas, there's a fear that it may indeed climb to a much higher total.
Back to us in studio here, and Ami Kaufman, of course, moving along to the other death and destruction and sadness around the world.
Well, this actually isn't death and destruction. This is Milan in Italy. The Expo 2015 is opening its doors today. It's going to be open for 6 months. It's going to draw 20 million people to the fashion and business capital. And it's going to be like a huge temporary theme park.
And Expo is, just to remind people who aren't as lucky as some of us, what is Expo exactly?
Well, it's basically a huge world fair where lots of countries come and show what they have. And there's, for example, there's going to be a German and UK pavilion that will feature bees. Japan is going to offer a virtual meal. Brazil has a small tropical forest there.
And guess what? Oddly enough, we have I-24 News Ayman Siksak in Milan for the Expo exhibition. Joining us live from Milan, Ayman, to be you in Milan. So but let's start with that. First,
Buongiorno, Yael.
Che bellissimo. I'm trying to refresh my Italian. First of all, tell us what you were seeing. What is represented there, and of course also what you ate this morning.
Well, Yael, I'll tell you about all I ate here in Milan since I've been here the past 2 days. It will take us a while, so we'll start with the Expo.
Yes.
What we're seeing here right now is a massive media frenzy. Journalists and representatives of these 120 countries that are participating this year are all flocking to the entrance of the Expo, which you can see here behind me. A huge media frenzy going on right now. The Prime Minister of Italy, Matteo Renzi, is scheduled to speak a little later on today, and it's been mired by some controversy with some Italians protesting yesterday against the Expo. So there's a lot going on about the Expo 2015 here in Milan this year.
Now, the marred by controversy, explain who's been protesting and why.
Well, you know, the massive funds that Italy is funneling to this Expo this year, a lot of Italians are saying that these funds could have been used elsewhere to a better end. And Italy is investing millions and millions of euros in the Expo. It's a massive exhibition this year. The scope, the sheer scope and magnitude of the very geography, it's so wide, so huge, so many people. A lot of Italians are frustrated. There's a lot of dismay. And this has been going on for several weeks now. And yesterday, just one day before the grand opening that we're about to see here today, there have been protests in Milan saying that this is not the proper use of Italian money. And as you know, Yael, the Italian government is no stranger to controversy, but the public uproar didn't help very much. The Expo is still set to start in just a few hours.
Definitely. Ayman, thank you so much for joining us. Do try out the risotto with octopus sauce. It's one of the specialties of Milan. We're very jealous.
And give our regards to Mario Renzi.
Yes. Okay. Grazie. Yes, Ami, let's continue us little minions here in the Middle East.
Right. We are moving on to Baltimore.
Right.
A little update on Baltimore. First of all, protests spread to Philadelphia and Cincinnati as well. But what's, I think, the most interesting development in this story is that Baltimore police handed over to prosecutors the initial results of their investigation of what happened to Freddie Gray during that ride to the police.
They handed them in.
They handed them in to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor now has to decide. What's interesting, though, is that they found that police did not tell of a third stop on the way to the police station. They told about 2 stops that they made.
Right.
But there was a third one that they did not tell about, that they did not discuss.
They did not discuss?
They did not discuss.
Well, we have a short video about this. What was the third
Well, actually,
stop?
we have a short video actually about what happened with Geraldo Rivera, a Fox news reporter, who was kind of, I guess...
He was also, because the scenes in Baltimore, as we saw yesterday, you brought somebody who was actually moonwalking like Michael Jackson in front of the police. But because it's a stage that the entire world is covering, and especially the American media, all the press is there. One of them, Geraldo Rivera, let's have a look what he faced.
Intellectually, having don't walk away once watch me start talking. That's the problem with the media. Because you want to report that we're thugs and we're breaking shit down here. You got these two big black dudes protecting you from all these black folks. We're the ones that need protection. Report for us. You're working for Fox News. Adam Jackson just went on Sean Hannity. Why are you running away? I'm not running.
Brilliant. Brilliant. No,
Yeah,
we're going to let that resonate.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of local people in Baltimore, they don't
yeah.
like Fox News too
but
much.
I want to go back quickly, though. There was a third stop, which we don't really know what they did.
We don't know exactly what
know.
happened there.
I mean, I think the fear with Baltimore is, as these details come out, you know, the crowds are still in the street, is that when the investigation, you know, when it's decided whether to follow through with the investigation or not, you know, it's going to decide also what happens with the crowds in the street and if the protests continue. Yes.
On to Pakistan. A court jailed 10 people for the attack on Nobel Prize winner Malala Yousafzai, who was 15 at the time. What's interesting about this little item here is that nobody knew about this court case. It just came out of the blue. 10 people were suddenly sentenced to life in prison for attacking her, and she was shot in the head and almost fatally injured. So, very odd. No journalists knew about it.
But
they
all
just,
of a sudden, 10 people.
Suddenly 10 people.
Listen, commendable effort, I think, in that respect.
Right.
But I'm assuming that everything was kept quiet because it's still a very divisive issue.
It is a very divisive
within
issue.
Pakistan when it comes to Taliban supporters or people in.
Yeah. And as we mentioned this week, it was going to happen, but he actually did it. Bernie Sanders said he's running for president for the Democratic nomination.
Yes.
The world stopped its breath.
Right. Everybody stopped. Yeah.
Tal Shalev was watching that one closely.
I don't think he even gave an interview to anyone. He just sent out an email.
Oh, that's so,
said,
come on, that's cute.
He said,
no, they all send an email. Yeah, they all do it like that.
They'll do it like that?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. After year of travel, discussion, and dialogue, I have decided to be a candidate for the Democratic
What does that mean, if at all? No, really, what does that mean, if at all? I know you're a Hillary girl. Clearly, he's not gonna.
No, I think it's very healthy that Hillary will have some competition. I just hope it'll be a bit more challenging.
So, no.
Yeah, like I said before, it's competition from the inside, from the race inside, and Elizabeth Warren will probably give a little influence from the outside. These are two people that are leaning on the left who want to basically change how Hillary is campaigning.
Right.
I think Bernie Sanders knows that he doesn't have a chance, and
but just to spice it up a little bit.
Just to spice it up.
Yes.
Right.
And.
Indonesia, the Bali 9 that were recently.
Executed.
This is, I think, a really heartbreaking story. One of the men was schizophrenic, Rodrigo Goularte. He had no idea that he was going to be executed until just a few minutes before he was shot dead. That's pretty much all we can say about this. It's just
as Adeline, in that respect, and I think that sheds a light on why these executions. Well, any execution, just horrific and not abuses any form of punishment. Sadly, all the time that we have. But Ami, shedding light on all the news that we missed this morning. Tal Shalev, you'll be with me for the biggest news, and that would be Instagram in the next part of the show. So do stay with us. First, the news. We'll be back right after. I-24 News Morning Edition on this May 1st. Long live, not communism, but workers of the world unite.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
It's May 1st. You see? Communism
and we're working here
and we're
Friday
working
morning.
here. It's May 1st,
It's our holiday.
Exactly. Yeah, well, let's leave. Okay, we are joined in studio by Channel 10 culture editor Chen Lieberman. Good morning to you. By Tal Shalev. Good morning to you for the Instagram segment, and by myself. And we're all gorgeous women. Take it away, Chen.
Oh, I'm starting, yes, because it's always Tal. So let's start with Robbie Williams. He's going to perform here tomorrow.
And
I'm not going. Okay. And I don't know if you saw the set list, but he's only going to do covers. He's not even going to do his good songs. He's going to do some of his new songs. But the ones that you remember from your teenage life, no, that's not going to happen. Okay.
You're going to have to wait for the Backstreet Boys for that.
Exactly. Because they didn't do anything since then, so they have to.
Backstreet Boys. I mean, Robbie Williams, first of all, for some of us who are not, in their 20s, that's fine. That's fine. He's young. He's doing covers of Queen.
I know, but
I'm going to see somebody, live on a stage.
Is that what we need Robbie Williams for? Covers of Queen? And the thing is, and the reason you're talking about
really good covers of Queen.
That's true. But Roger Waters, oh, yeah. Really?
Yes.
You want to do that?
Yeah, which one? Which one do you do?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
I just threw that out
Is
in
this
the air.
Real life? Is this just fantasy? Born in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes.
I'm with you.
Really? Are we
I'm
doing
with
this?
you. Yeah.
Look up to the skies and see.
Yeah, we're killing the audience.
I'm just a poor boy. Okay. So that's what you're gonna get from Robbie Williams, just better.
Okay.
But Roger Waters almost wanted to destroy that as well. So
Why?
Roger Waters sent him a letter saying performing in Israel is supporting racism. Don't do that. Now, another breaking news: the sun is shining. You know, Roger Waters, he's doing it like every time a performer. It doesn't matter if it's Robbie Williams, if it's an unknown singer. Don't perform in Israel. The thing is, since the war last summer, we only have has-beens coming to performers. So please, Roger, you won. No one's coming. Just let the ones who are willing to come.
Okay, and I will chime in again to say, for those of us who don't get out much, I'm okay with that. Okay?
Yeah, with the has-beens.
I'm okay with that. It's not fair to, you know, the younger generation of Israel, but okay, yeah.
It's funny because actually the has-beens are the ones selling more tickets. The Israeli audience are not really into the new ones, the fresh ones.
Maybe it has to do with how much the tickets cost, and only the people who are old enough to buy a ticket that are so expensive.
So we will also have Backstreet Boys, Lauryn Hill, and Art Garfunkel.
Yeah, Art Garfunkel is something we can debate for an hour, and I'm with you on that one. But you'll be brought in for that, and we'll do an hour special.
So will you do karaoke covers of Art Garfunkel too?
That's a weekly segment.
A bridge.
You see? I just given it to you.
Water, I will lead you on.
You are horrible. Move on.
Okay. So Woody Allen,
yes.
Talking about horrible. Let's watch his new trailer for his new film, because he's putting out a trailer and it's like a big event. Everybody's talking about it.
It's ridiculous.
But can he just stop doing a film each year and start doing a film like every 3 years and maybe
every
a better
year
film?
He does a rendition or some form of play on an older script that we all remember. I constantly feel like when, these new films that come out...
Streetcar Named Desire is Blue Jasmine. And everybody's like, oh, it's a great movie.
Okay,
no, it's not.
There he stole from there, but I actually like Blue Jasmine. I gotta tell you.
I also liked Midnight in Paris.
Oh, I hated it.
Midnight in Paris,
I think
me
I'm
too.
developing an allergy to Woody
I'm
Allen.
with you in that. And then there was
I think
this
that's my condition.
Melinda it was.
Melinda was nice.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in dispute. We have a clip, though. We have
a clip. I'll tell you before what it's about. It's a philosophy professor suffering from despair, discovering a new life.
But it's with Emma Stone?
Yeah, hold on.
With Emma Stone.
It's a Hannah and her sister's storyline. Michael Caine played that role 20 years ago, and he now did an entire new film out of it. That's what it sounds like. Let's take a look at the trailer.
You suffer from despair.
How comforting that would be.
Are you aware of what's going on in this too?
It was at this moment that my life came together.
There was no question there was something lighter about Abe.
Good morning.
I love her.
Energy this morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
You love her. You love Emma Stone.
She's great. I once stood behind her in a line to Balthazar's in New York.
Those were the days.
I once stood behind her in a line in the Four Seasons in LA.
There you go.
So great.
We Emma Stone.
We have so much in common.
And we sing.
I can leave. We can just ignore the cameras.
Yes, back to the show.
So Woody Allen, yeah. So you see, he's a philosophy professor having an affair with his student. Great Woody Allen, because no one remembers the article that your stepdaughter wrote about how you maybe
husbands and wives
sexually abused her when she was 7 years old.
I know. There's that.
I mean, whether it's true or not, he should have a bit more sensibility to his public image since that article was published.
Or you can argue that, that's his way of counteracting and saying, I don't care, I didn't do it, and that's that.
And I'll do another
Yeah, I mean, because
movie.
we don't know, but I'm with you on the fact that it's a rehash of old scripts, and you don't have to do a film once a year.
And
You
it's
really don't.
amazing. I think he became a crowd pleaser. He used to be more tragic in his endings in his movies back in the 90s and 80s. And lately, he wants the crowd to be happy and satisfied when he leaves the theater. And he became this mainstream director. People go to a Woody Allen movie thinking they're going to see a high quality film. No.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
And
But-
now let's talk about Johnny Mitchell.
Yes.
So
what is going on with her?
So she's been hospitalized for a month now, and TMZ uncovered documents showing that her best friend asked for conservatorship over her because she's not responding. She's in a coma. But then her official site published a statement saying that she's fine, that she's recovering. So there's a mystery involving this
and plus,
whole story.
it's some form of an illness that I think is in dispute with medical doctors, whether it's emotional, whether it's a psychiatric condition or
A psychosomatic
condition, or actually
reaction.
physical. Either way, very, very, very sad, I must say.
Yeah, but it's a good opportunity to just talk about how amazing this woman is. She's 71-year-old now, and she represents the female artist that took control of her career, that she was one of the first ones to have critical lyrics, and it's just nice to remember her song.
and
Maybe we should sing something.
Yeah, I wanted to suggest, but I'm not sure. I think it's a bit tragic, you know.
Paradise.
Yeah, I wanted to know. I wanted to see how you would do that.
Well, no, we're gonna do.
That's a difficult one.
It's a tricky
It's
one.
a really, really tricky one. I'm almost afraid to join you on that one, and I have not had enough vodka this morning. So there's that.
Okay,
but it is time to move to Instagram. We will finish the show on Chantal and myself singing in rendition of something.
Yes.
So
Hava Nagila, I suggest.
Okay. And political Instagram pictures.
Hava Nagila, Israeli politicians have abandoned us on Instagram since the elections, but luckily enough, I told you earlier, we have another campaign coming up. That is the 2016 presidential campaign. And it seems like it's going to be an interesting battle on Instagram, but today we're going to talk about one person who hasn't announced his candidacy yet, but he's already the winner on Instagram, and that is Jeb Bush.
Yes.
Jeb Bush is a really active Instagram user. He has about 4 to 5 posts a week. So here we saw this week he took a trip to the Pacific Northwest, and he took a picture from the air. Then he also,
How very Nat Geo.
I think there was another picture on his way home, and then he met his mom and dad. There you see.
Oh, stop!
Okay.
Wow.
So this was before a speech to a Hispanic evangelical audience in Texas. He meets with his parents. So happy I get to see. No, if we can get back.
Yeah, let's go back.
So happy I get to see mom and dad before the speech, and he praises the Baltimore mother who pulled her son out of the protest, and he says she has a lot of common with Barbara.
Okay.
But, Bush already lost the Sheldon primary. That was the reports this week in the United States. That basically he doesn't have a chance to get the Sheldon Adelson support. So that is not the best news for him.
No. Does that mean he doesn't get a free newspaper?
Well,
Okay.
Meanwhile, his brother, George W., met with his former spokesperson, Dana Perino, and also posted that on Instagram. So always fun to be with old friends. She's a former White House press secretary.
Right.
She has a new book, and the good news is, and today I think she hosts a talk show,
And
on
there's
Fox News.
Nothing like that to promote a new book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the Bush family, but we're going to move to another royal family, our
Yes.
favorite royal family.
Clinton.
No.
No. We're here in the Middle East.
We're in the Middle
We
East.
like the Levant.
Drum roll, drum roll, drum roll.
Okay,
Yes.
so I don't know if you recognize, but it's two of our BFFs together. So the Jordanian King Abdallah visited Canada. So we have actually pictures of the visit from both sides.
And I want to stop you for a second because the King of Jordan, Abdallah, is so good looking, and he's living proof that size does not matter. Look at his height.
Wait till you see what I've got ready for you.
Yes.
But basically, so we got two sides of the story because we got them both from the Jordanian king, but also from the Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper. So that was very interesting. But actually, Abdallah's eyes were looking to a totally different place, to the New York UN headquarters, where the Crown Prince Hussein bin Abdallah gave a UN Security Council chairman session on a special session on how youth can combat violent extremism. And he became the youngest person ever to chair a meeting of the UN Security Council. And let's look at that. That's the next generation.
That's the next
You know, everyone's talking about Will
I'm
and
going to
Kate.
say it. I mean, yummy, get a haircut.
No, wait till there's another picture,
There's
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yummy.
Yeah, he's looking good.
He looks like Shia LaBeouf.
No.
But
Take it back.
Like a Middle Eastern Shia LaBeouf.
So
what? It's a compliment.
Really?
I meant it as a compliment.
Shia LaBeouf does that for you? Yeah.
He's the youngest person. He's a record breaker because he's the youngest person ever to chair a meeting of the Security Council. And the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said about him, the quote unquote, the prince is not yet 21 years old, but he's already a leader in the 21st century. So that was really nice. But guess who is waiting back home? Back home for her husband to come home, and look what she posted. Look at this video, if we can see the video.
Okay, we have a video of
from Queen Rania,
the most beautiful, beautiful woman in the Middle East. Let's take a look.
That's posted on Instagram.
That's on Instagram. Look at that. Look at that.
Look at that. It's good to have you home.
Oh my word.
Yes.
Oh my word. And I'm back in the palace, honey. And I love how it starts in black and white, and then Dad comes out, dissolve into color. This is, I mean, listen.
Yes. I want them to adopt me.
No, please, we're moving.
Please adopt me.
There will be a series where you and I move to Jordan and beg the royal family to adopt us.
He looks a bit whiter in this.
I don't care. He's a good-looking man.
Well, and then moving back to Washington, everybody's talking about, the White House correspondent dinner, but actually a much more interesting dinner that took place this week.
The after party?
No, the White House had a very busy week because Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, was in Washington. That was a big deal, but there was a big state dinner, which I have. So we had pictures from Pete Souza, our one and only Pete Souza, the White House official photographer, who gave us inside looks. We had pictures of Michelle preparing, and I have some inside information on what went at this state dinner.
The arms, we can't get. I mean, we're still on the arms and this one.
No, do you want some gossip from the state? Okay, so there was a toast over sake. Obama cited a haiku poem on spring, friendship, and harmony. Shinzo Abe quoted the notable song.
The theme of Bordello? Why is it all so pink?
I have a moment. I have a karaoke moment for you now. So Shinzo Abe quoted the song "Ain't No Mountain High Enough."
Ain't no mountain high enough.
Wow. Okay. Michelle wore a purple dress made by the Japanese.
Yes.
I'm gonna try and keep you in focus here. Made by the Japanese designer Tadashi Shoji. They had a meal fusing American and Japanese influences. For instance, a Caesar salad with Mizuhiki papercord, with I have no idea. But so that was the state dinner. Amazing state dinner. Actually, it's the 8th state dinner the Obamas have had in their 6 years of tenure. It's the smallest number of state dinners a president has had since Truman. But they still have one very important one coming up this fall. It'll be a state dinner for China, which will probably be a big event too.
Wow.
Yes.
I wonder how the fusion will look there for the kitchen.
And just last but not least,
please.
We have the elections coming up in Britain next week. So Prime Minister Cameron got this surprising endorsement this week from Mike Bloomberg, former
Mayor of New York.
Yeah, who thinks he's like the coronator of the world. So he posted this photo endorsing him, saying he should earn him 5 more years at 10 Downing Street. I'm not sure how much influence that will have on the voters in London, but it was a nice gesture.
No, I know, and it was, I mean, given the fact that it's all the time we have it, it was the Queen's birthday yesterday, as celebrated around embassies around the world. Tal Shalev attended. I did not say.
And now you can sing God Save the Queen.
I was about to sing
Happy birthday.
Or I thought about Rule Britannia. You know that one? No, you don't know
maybe
what
something British.
British quickly. I don't know.
It's like,
all the time.
Boy George.
Boy George.
Come.
That's the background music. Do stay with us. It's the best of the week coming up for the morning edition, and tune in Monday morning, I-24 News Morning Edition. Yes. How does it go? Yeah, I have no idea.